Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pilot Talk with Michelle Treskin and Stein Mjotvedt, the podcast where we focus on aviation-related subjects ranging from how you can get started with your pilot education to career advice for pilots, technical flying tips, and the latest news from the aviation industry. And today, we're going to talk about something really exciting. What's the topic of today, Michelle?
We're going to talk about how to become a pilot.
I think there's a lot of listeners that potentially will become pilots in the future that are going to enjoy this episode.
That's right. Yeah, I mean it's a very broad subject because in North America they've got different way of doing it, sort of, if you want.
Yeah.
If you look at the detail, and then in Europe there's also a little different way of doing it. Even though at the end product is the same. I mean, you all get a license to fly a commercial airliner.
Yeah.
But it's the way they do it.
Yeah, so those are the two regions that we're going to focus on today as well, right? North America and Europe primarily.
That's right, yeah. Because the rest, I mean, it's there's some distinction here and there, but I don't think we'll have enough time to go through the whole episode. However, if the listeners would like to have more information about maybe a Chinese license or, another way, another country, then we can maybe do another special on that one.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, so stay tuned, guys, and you'll get to learn how to become a pilot.
You are listening to Pilot Talk by OSM Aviation.
All right, Michelle, another episode.
An exciting one, too.
Yep. And we are going to get right into the details.
Nitty-gritty.
We're going to explain to the listeners today how you go about becoming a pilot in Europe and in North America.
Right.
We're also going to talk a little bit about the different hour requirements, formal requirements, and also some of the pre-entry or prerequisites to get into a flight school and how you can prepare beforehand.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the subjects for today, and I think we're going to dive into Europe first, right?
We might as well.
Yeah.
We're in Europe right now,
Yeah.
so we might as well do Europe, and then we'll do North America at the end.
Indeed.
Sure.
So
Sounds like a plan.
it sounds like a good plan, right?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
And what in Europe there's a couple of different ways to go about it.
Yeah, there's actually, I think there's three ways of doing it. Is there? There's one called the integrated, which you're going to explain to that. There's also one called the multi-pilot license, which is also called the MPL. This is a new big thing here right now in Europe.
Yeah.
And also the modular one for Europe. So give us the difference between all those three there, Stein.
That's a good way to structure it, Michelle. I'm going to go ahead and start with the integrated program first.
Okay, sure.
The integrated program basically means that you read theory and parallel to that, you also do the practical flight training. But
Right.
it's a holistic approach. So you do everything in one place from start to finish, or as we call it, from zero to hero.
Right.
And it is typically a program or any integrated program will typically take anywhere from 18 to 24 months. At
Right.
our school, it's 20 months. And we call it the First Officer Program. And we also have one in the U.S. called the Professional Pilot Program. But even though they do part of the training in the U.S.,
Right,
they will still get European licenses.
right, exactly.
Pilot Talk with Stein Mjotvedt and Michelle Treskin.
So the integrated model is designed as a holistic training approach to prepare the students for their first airline job. And at OSM Aviation Academy, we have something called the Airline Ready Pilot concept. So, we don't train people just to get a license. We train them so they are ready for their first job at the airlines to start working as first officers. And there's a lot of different things that we do to achieve that. You know very well that we have a mentoring program. You're one of the mentors.
I am one of the mentors, yeah. And I'm happy to be one of the mentors, actually.
Yeah.
It's one of the most satisfying for me because, I stopped flying now, but it's really satisfying to sit down with the young generation and talk about flying and guide them and give them the little tricks here and there to make them a better pilot.
Yeah.
It's great.
Really cool. And it's really, it's such an important aspect of it, you know? It's a little bit, it's extracurricular. We don't need to do things like this, but the mentoring has an incredible value to the students.
Oh,
They get to-
absolutely.
Yeah, they get to spend time with you. They get to, you know, listen to your thoughts on airmanship, on problem solving, all these different things that you have so much experience to share
That's right.
and
Yeah.
to transfer to the next generation of pilots, right?
That's right. Yeah, within the 20 months that they go through the training, we set about 5 sessions where I come in and I spend a couple of days with the students. And we have different subjects, like you say, there's a lot of human factor subjects. We talk about everything. If there's a special thing that they want to talk about during their training, we'll talk about that. So they've got also a 24-hour contact with me. If they want to talk to me, they can email me. So you almost have like a professional airline pilot following you throughout your training. It's just very special.
Wow, yeah, that's
no cost.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in addition to, you know, the airline ready pilot concept, the mentoring is instrumental to achieving that.
Yeah.
We also have, you know, lots of airline representatives in our executive committee who come to our school 4 times a year. We talk about the training, we get their feedback.
Right.
We ask them lots of questions. Obviously, you know, our customers as a flight school, our customers are the airline,
Sure. Yeah.
you know, because we deliver trained pilots and they need to hire them.
That's right.
So, you know, so the feedback from them is obviously very important as they will direct us in terms of, okay, well, this is working really well, and here is an area where you could focus a little bit more on this area
Right.
during the initial training, which will help your students. So we're really adamant about listening and getting a lot of feedback from them as well.
That's right.
And on top of that, I think one of the things that really makes our integrated program unique is that we have 75 hours in the Boeing 737 simulator.
Huge.
Yeah, we do the basic instrument training in the Boeing 737, and we
Yeah.
do a multi-crew cooperation course and an airline preparation course towards the end. So,
That's a lot.
yeah, it's a lot of hours. It's
A
more
lot
than
of
you would
hours, yeah.
typically see. And
And at the end of this, we actually, we don't, I can't say guarantee, but we will try to find them a seat for their first job.
they do, and that's the unique thing about OSM Aviation Academy, because OSM Aviation and OSM Aviation Academy have that shared interest of employing pilots. And so, you know, it's interesting that you say we can't say it's a guarantee, because you're absolutely correct. We cannot, you know, there are no guarantees in this world. But we definitely have the best predispositions to help our students succeed.
Exactly.
And we give them a conditional job offer when they start their training. And conditional means that it's
Dependent.
certain, yeah, it's certain conditions apply. And one of
Right.
them is obviously the student's initiative and motivation and attitude throughout the training,
That's right.
and that they meet certain standards.
Right.
But, you know, our students usually come out as really well-trained pilots because we have a pretty strict selection process.
Exactly.
So we already know that they have the propensity to succeed in the training and also in their career.
And it depends also what's going on in the marketplace right now. With,
Yeah.
you know, there's airlines are collapsing. There's more pilots on the market. I mean, it all depends, and that's why we can't really say we guarantee you, but it's conditional.
Exactly, because, yeah, and I think that's interesting because a lot of students are asking me about that these days. It's like, oh, airlines are going bankrupt and so on. And I think if you talk to a lot of the people that have a good knowledge and understanding of the industry, they've been predicting this for quite some time.
Yeah.
I saw Lufthansa's CEO very recently, now in August, went out and said, well, there's going to be very few airlines in the world in the future, maybe like 16 airlines, but so fewer airlines, but bigger airlines, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen with some of the airlines that have gone bankrupt, like Monarch was a big one, Primera.
Yeah.
Is that immediately airlines would go out and say, hey, those men and women that work for these airlines, send in your applications to us because we need more pilots.
Right.
So they become absorbed by other airlines. But you are right, it's a turbulent market.
Very much.
But in turbulence, it's also opportunity.
That's right. That's true.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's changing every day, so it's an exciting time to be a pilot. Anyways, I think it's a great profession. And if you do it right, if you find the right school, I think your chances are is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we, now we've talked about the integrated model, holistic approach, 0 to hero. You go to one school, they give you everything you need. you go out and get a first job afterwards.
And how much is that? Is that pretty expensive, what?
I mean, it depends. I think that, obviously it costs more than some other degrees in other areas of the world, or in other industries, I should say. So a master's degree will run you somewhere between, 50, 60, maybe even 70,000 euros.
Right.
But a pilot education is 95,000 euros, around there, 90, 95.
So significantly bigger, like greater.
Yeah, and it varies from school to school. I think at our schools in Norway and Sweden, I think a lot of students coming from other countries really get a really good deal because of the currency exchange rate.
Oh, yeah, that's
So
right.
if you're coming in with dollars or euros or British pounds, you're going to be able to get a really high quality education, but for a lower price than in your home country.
Right.
So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
we see that too now with lots of, students from Britain, from France, from Spain, Italy, other countries.
yeah.
Because it's a cost-saving thing for them to
Right.
come to Norway.
And it's
or
not
Sweden.
guaranteed that if you pay that amount of money that you're gonna get into the school. I mean, you go through a selection process.
Oh, yeah. That's obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you can't pay your way in,
No,
but
that's right.
the pilot education costs money and it's more expensive because, we don't just have classrooms and teachers. We need planes, they need fuel, they need maintenance, there are landing fees, airport fees, all these different things.
Yeah.
It really runs
Yeah.
up the cost.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, but let's keep going on the how to become a pilot path and focus on the next path, which you mentioned it was the MPL, right?
The multi-pilot license, yeah.
Yeah, multi-pilot license, and it's very similar to the integrated path. It is a holistic approach.
Right.
It's from start to finish.
Yeah.
But the MPL, I would say, and the biggest difference there is that you do a lot more multi-crew flying and a lot more simulator flying.
Right.
And, it's been, like you said, it's a new concept, relatively new, historically
Relatively,
speaking, right?
Yeah.
It's, I think, maybe like 7 years old,
Yeah,
something
that's
like
right,
that.
yeah, 7 to 8 years, yeah.
And Lufthansa has been instrumental in developing the concept, and then a lot of different European airlines have gotten on board. Norwegian, SAS, they're
Yeah.
all running MPL programs. And
Right. Do you think that in your professional experience, do you think that an MPL pilot at the end is a better pilot than an integrated pilot?
No, I don't. I do think that as an integrated graduate versus an MPL graduate, when you're brand new and you start your first job,
Right,
you're going to have different strengths.
right, okay.
But those will even out over the span of like 2 years on the line.
Yeah.
So
Catch up.
what I mean is that usually, an integrated model doesn't have that many hours in a medium range jet such as we do. And then what usually is the challenge for them when transitioning into the airline is to apply the SOP, the flows, the structural things that you get more training on when you're flying as a multi-crew in a simulator.
Right, right.
So the MPL students might be stronger in that area, but then what I've heard from the training managers at the different airlines that we speak to on a regular basis is that the students from the integrated model usually are better stick and rudder in the beginning because they've flown in more, even though you can simulate weather in the simulator,
Right.
the real thing is more variable and it's just a different environment. So, but I think, like I said, after 2 years on the line, an integrated student or an integrated alumni or graduate and an MPL graduate will be at the same level.
Yeah.
They just have.
They got more manual flying, if you want, you would say, integrated than the MPL
Yeah,
guys.
more manual flying, more solo flying, more
Right.
self-reliance and
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But the MPL it's a really promising concept, the MPL. And one of the things that I thought was the real strength of it is that it requires an airline's involvement. So you need to have your cadets branded to, go to airline A, B, or Z. And
Right.
and that's a strength but now it's happening on a wider scale that airlines are getting involved with flight schools anyway because they really need to secure their future pilot
Right.
recruitment needs. And recently there have been some developments with the MPL as well because before you need to, after you're done with the type rating, you need to do 6 landings
Yeah.
in the actual aircraft
That's
before you
right.
start flying on the line. For the MPL initially, they had to do 12.
Oh,
And I think that that's been adjusted now, so it's 6 regardless if you're MPL or integrated.
Okay,
Because obviously, if you're going to do twice as many landings in a Boeing 737 or an A320 or whatever it is that you're type rating yourself on, that's a lot of fuel. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
And usually, they'd have to do their touch and goes or their landing practice over course of 2 days instead of just one.
Wow, yeah.
So, but I think that's been changed. And I think it's just 6 landings now as well,
Right,
but I'd have to look that up to be certain. Another interesting thing that's happening with the MPL that I've heard a lot of talk about is to have a white tail MPL. So basically, training using the same model with lots of multi-crew training and
Yeah.
lots of simulator training, but not necessarily branded for a particular airline at the onset. So you could go to different airlines that operate that model. And obviously, this gives flexibility. One of the reasons why we've been holding off on the MPL model is that the integrated model gives us flexibility to allow the students to go to any airline.
That's
So
right,
it's,
yeah.
if an airline, like you said, went bankrupt or something like that, it's just they can apply for any
There's
other
more
airline.
flexibility.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah,
flexibility.
exactly.
But like I said, I think the MPL is good. It's promising. I think the industry is warmed up to the idea.
Yeah.
And started seeing it. But yeah, integrated or MPL, those two models, choose one of those and you'll be on a good path to secure your first job as a first officer.
Good to know. Absolutely. And there's modular.
Then there's modular. And modular, it sounds like I'm just beating my own drum saying that integrated MPL, that's the only way to go. It's not. I understand that modular might be the right choice for some people because the modular means that basically you do the same training as in an integrated model, but you could do it at different flight schools. You could do it over a longer time span. You could spread out the cost over a longer time.
That helps a lot.
It does help if you're in
Yeah.
a situation where you need to finance it and you need to
That's
save
right.
up money in between and work at the same time.
Right.
Because if you're in an integrated model or integrated program or an MPL program, it's a full-time study. It's a full-time study. You barely, I know some students have part-time jobs, but you don't really have time for
Right.
stuff like
Yeah.
that.
You're a full-time student.
Yeah. So, the modular is based on your life situation, might be the best choice for you. If you have a family, if you want to work at the same time and pay it down in parts instead of,
Is there a time limit for a modular? Like if you start the modular one and do you have to it completed within the next 5 years or something? Is there a time limit?
not that I know of.
No.
No, but I know that for the integrated model is 36 months.
Right.
So, that's the maximum time in training that you can have. But I'm not sure about the modular, what the
Right,
restrictions are
I
there.
guess that it goes without saying that if you take more time in the training, you take like a couple of months in between modules,
Yeah,
you get rusty.
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And then you might have to do some extra training to
That's
get back
right,
up to
yeah.
speed. And I think also, the modular, some people say, oh, well, you can get a lower cost because they look at the price of the different modules and they add it up and they see, okay, well, this total sum is lower than the price of an integrated model.
Right.
But what they often miss is that in between the modules, you need to do experience building, which means renting an aircraft for many, many hours to get those hours in your logbook.
That's expensive.
So the in-between cost also adds up.
Right.
And in addition, like we talked about, if it takes longer, that also means loss of potential income.
True.
So, you know what I mean? So if
Yeah, I
you're
know
done,
exactly what you mean.
if you're done after 18 months and you can go out and get that first job, you start making money.
That's right.
But if you spend 36 months in training, then that's,
You're 36
that's
months. That's
a
right.
lot of months where you don't have an income, whereas if you were done sooner, you could start
That's right.
earning a salary.
Yeah.
Pilot Talk. Available on iTunes, Spotify, or osmaviation.com/podcast.
So yeah, that's it. So just to recap, integrated model or multi-pilot license or MPL model are the two types that we recommend, right?
Right, exactly.
If you're able to do it that way. But if you're not, the modular path could be an option.
That's right.
Just know that, it takes a lot of discipline to power through because you're not going to be part of a class. You're usually going to be by yourself, and that
That's
kind of
right.
stuff.
There's no support almost.
Yeah, and I think that the extracurricular things that's really the strength of the MPL and the integrated because you're going to be part of a class. You get that team spirit, teamwork, communication
You
skills.
got continuity and all that. so, yeah.
Continuity, yeah, you're part of a community, in a
Yeah.
different way.
You live and eat aviation for
Yeah.
20, 24 months. I mean, it's the way to go.
Yeah, Yeah.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you.
Exactly.
Totally agree. Yeah,
Eat, sleep, aviate, repeat, right?
exactly. That's right. Exactly.
All
Now,
right.
there's a big difference between the European and the North American model.
It is, yeah. If we go across the Atlantic to the land of the brave and the free, and
Star and Stripes.
we look at their way of doing things, the FAA or the Federal Aviation Administration,
Yeah.
does require you to have 1,500 hours.
Yeah,
Until you
that's
start
a
working
big
as
drawback.
Yeah, so,
I
and
mean,
that's
that's a lot of hours.
it's a lot of hours, yeah. And this requirement is pretty recent. It came after the Buffalo, New York accident, and that led to, discussions about pilot experience levels and all that kind of stuff. And that went into legislative
Yeah.
debate, and then
Yeah.
it resulted in the requirement being 1,500 hours to work as a commercial pilot. There are some exceptions, though, right?
That's right, yeah.
And what are
It
those?
depends. If if you're coming from the military,
Yeah.
you've got that military time, then you can actually, you only need 700 hours, basically, to get an
'Cause you-
ATP.
Yeah, because you get so many flight hours and so much training.
Yeah, you
in the
get that
military.
experience, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And also, I guess, if you're a university graduate,
Yeah.
you have less, you don't need 1,500 hours.
So if
You
you
need
have a
less.
bachelor and some aviation-related bachelor, then you
That's
get
right,
away
yeah.
with,
About what, like 1,200 hours or something, is it?
yeah. It's
Oh, yeah.
actually, it's for the bachelor, it's 1,000 hours.
1,000 hours, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then if you have an associate's degree in aviation, that's 1,250.
That's right, yeah. So because you studied in aviation sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
more extensive on the theoretical part of things.
Yeah, yeah. But that 1,500 hours is quite a big wall to achieve because, you graduate with about 200, 250 hours, and then now you got to wait, another 1,250 or 1,200 hours
Yeah.
to be able to have a job. It's a bit of a drawback.
It's a very big drawback because
yeah.
getting that experience is costly.
Yeah,
And it's also, that's turning off people to pursuing the career as a pilot, because not only do you have to pay for the flight training, but you also need to gain that experience.
yeah,
And, some are able to continue their training, become flight instructors, and gain those hours while working as flight instructors. It's a
Yeah.
good path to take,
yeah,
because you'll develop a lot as a pilot as well.
Right.
But if you can't take that path, or if I don't know, it's not an unlimited number of flight instructors that can work in the U.S. and gain those hours that way.
no, that's right. And it's not everybody can become an instructor. I
That's
mean,
true.
you need to have some kind of talent to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to be patient, you have to have the right tools to that.
Yeah, that's true. So if that's not a path you can take, then now the options are starting to narrow down.
What's
to
left?
to gain that experience.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
not that much left, is there?
No, it's like banner towing, air taxi, different types of operations.
Agriculture pilot, yeah.
Yeah, agriculture pilots, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely a challenge, and I think they'd speak a lot about it in the U.S., this 1,500-hour rule, how are we going to do it, and so on and so forth. And it's led to a pilot shortage in the
Yeah.
U.S.
Yeah.
It's, and we've touched on this before, as a regional pilot in the U.S., the salaries didn't used to be good, but now we see the salaries really increasing. And they even have sign-on bonuses of
Oh,
like
yeah,
$17,000,
huge sign-on bonuses.
$20,000 sign-on bonuses because
Yeah,
they can't get enough pilots.
Yeah,
And a couple of years back, Republic Airlines went bankrupt because of a pilot shortage. They didn't have enough pilots.
yeah, they park the airplanes and they can't use them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's funny because, there's really, it's not a pilot shortage, it's a shortage of experienced pilots.
yeah, qualified
Yeah,
pilots.
qualified pilots with time.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that, we're still where we are, and that's why we have to make this pilot job attractable.
Yeah. And I think it's especially frustrating if you're a recruiter or if you're in North America and you see, oh, well, our pilots need to gain these 1,500 hours, but then you look to Europe
Yeah,
and you see that, oh, they have this integrated model and the MPL model, and their pilots go out and start working with less than 1,500 hours. And it works like a charm because the training is geared towards having them
Exactly.
airline ready from the
that's
get-go.
right, that's right.
So, but yeah,
It's a big difference.
It's a big difference.
Yeah.
And then, now we've talked about the different paths. So what should we say to young people that, they haven't turned 18 yet, they're young, they want to become a pilot? What should I do leading up to when
Well-
I'm old enough to apply to a flight school?
I personally, I joined the Air Cadets.
Yeah.
So.
What's
you know,
that? Explain.
Air Cadets for me is like, it's almost like the Boy Scouts. It's one of those organizations for young teenagers, if you want, male, female, it didn't matter.
That's cool.
You joined sort of just like the Army, if you want, the aviation, the Air Force, and you basically do a lot of drills, and you do a lot of, you play soldier if you want. And the benefit is that you also have access to the gliding schools. So basically, you're getting those skills ingrained from a very young age, and that helps a lot. That's what I did.
Yeah.
That helped me to when I did go into the military, I already had these skills, if you want, inside of me, and it was easy to develop, basically. But there's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah. And that's really good advice. And they've got something similar in Sweden as well. It's called Young Pilots.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. You can join that. It's like a club, like you said, or scouts, something like that. I don't know. But it's an organization, at least, that young people could come in and learn about aviation.
That's right.
They get to come along on flights. They get to learn about navigation. They get to learn
Exactly.
about radio communication and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, it gives you a taste for it, but also gives you knowledge and preps you for what's going to come later.
That's right. Yeah.
And you also mentioned gliders there. Really good
Huge.
way to prep.
Yeah.
People who've flown gliders, they will usually have really good stick and rudder skills already at the onset of their training.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very beneficial. And but when it comes to the academics in high school, there are 3 subjects that are really important, and
Yeah.
that's English,
Yep.
mathematics,
Huge.
and physics.
Physics. Yeah.
Because all the literature is in English, and also 95%, I think, of everything that's written about aviation in terms of articles and things like that, and even this podcast, right? It's
That's
in
right.
English.
Yeah.
So the English is, it's just
It's a
instrumental.
universal language.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
aviation language, and,
Yeah.
and you're going to study, all the books are going to be written in English and so on and so forth. So that needs to be there, and then the math, because you're going to do some calculations,
Yeah.
weight and balance calculations,
Yeah.
performance calculations, and also when you're flying, you need to be able to do mental arithmetics.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Even
So-
though we are into the automation age, if you want,
Yeah,
we still need to calculate things very
Yeah.
quickly.
indeed.
Yeah.
And check that the computers are correct and that the
That's
numbers
right, yeah.
make sense, right?
Yeah. You can't really take the human being out of the cockpit. We will always have, I think, I personally think, it's my opinion, that we will always have humans in the cockpit.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
I get that question quite a lot now from people who are wanting to get into the industry. It's like,
Right.
am I not going to have a job because of automation?
Right, right.
And what's funny is I always just flip the question back, because if I'm doing a presentation, there's like 100 people there or 120
Yeah,
people
yeah,
there,
yeah,
and I ask
yeah.
them, how many of you would buy a ticket for a plane without a pilot? And usually no hands go up.
There's no hands. No.
So that's the psychological aspect of it.
True.
Right? But, then again, this generation's, I would never do it, might be the next generation's normal,
Might all
or
change.
next, maybe 2 or
Yeah.
3 or 4 generations from now. But I usually tell people, just like you said, I don't think you should be worried about, unmanned commercial travel on a big scale until you retire.
No.
If you start now,
No,
you'll have
it's
a
not
whole
gonna happen.
career. But looking forward further than that, I'm not sure,
Oh, maybe,
you know?
maybe. But
Then-
for the next
Yeah.
3, 4 generations,
next-
I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
What do you think about that, Stein? If a young man, young woman wants to visit a flight academy, or they're curious to see if this is something for them.
we do that all the time. We have something called Pilot Open Day.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's really, people really appreciate having the opportunity to come to the school. Or we even go to other cities as well, where
Yeah.
we just have a conference room. We talk about flying, about the job opportunities, about the training program, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. So for anybody who wants to come visit our school, just go to osmaviationacademy.com/events, and you'll find all the upcoming events there. And come say hi. I'm usually at those things, and I love to meet new people that are interested in the industry.
Yeah.
And if you visit us at our schools in Arndale or in Westeros, you can also. Florida, yeah, we got a new school in Florida now.
That's
That's
right,
exciting.
exactly.
Yeah, OSM Aviation Academy US.
Yay.
That's cool.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was thinking about,
State.
it's funny you say that, the flight school is open for special days and all that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, there's also commercial pilot shows that people can actually also visit or participate. And during those shows, you can spend a whole day looking at all different kinds of academies that are available. You're into the aviation world at that point.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Yeah, you got Pilot Careers Live
Yeah.
in the UK, Pilot Expo in Berlin.
That's
I mean,
right,
there's
that's coming
plenty of
up.
these
Yeah.
trade shows you can go to as well.
Women in aviation in the States, that's a big one too. These shows, I would encourage the younger generation to come in, even though, they're cheap to get in, and you can get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a good thing to do. Just do your research before you get into the industry. Check out if it's the right thing for you.
yeah.
And and then I think the last thing worth mentioning is that there are screening tests or pilot aptitude tests, but
Right.
that is such a big subject. You know what? I think we should do a whole episode on that.
That's a good idea.
And we should probably get a psychologist or an aviation psychologist to
That's
come
a
on and
good
talk
idea.
about it.
Yeah.
I think that will be really interesting.
Yeah, I think
So-
that people need to know that, even though everybody can fly an airplane if you like, but there is a big selection process to become an airline pilot.
Yeah, professional
And,
pilot.
You can prepare for that in a younger age, or when you're at school. But don't forget that it's not a given.
And that's true.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so then we covered how to become a pilot in the EU and in North America, and the
Exactly.
different paths that you can take.
Yeah.
In addition to the civilian paths, you also have the military path that you took, but
I took
that's,
the military path.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's also a big subject. Maybe we'll save that for later, talk about military
Talk
aviation.
about that. Yeah.
If you guys have any questions or anything unanswered after listening to this podcast, you want to know more about a specific subject, you can always go to osmaviation.com/podcast. Obviously, you'll find all the episodes there, but there's also a forum. If you scroll down, fill that in, send us your questions, send us your feedback, send us your suggestions. I mean, we want this to be an interactive podcast. We want to learn about what you guys are interested in. And
It'll be our pleasure.
it will be our pleasure.
Absolutely.
Yep. And on that note, we're going to say,
Blue sky.
and safe landings.
Right on.
Ciao.
Bye.